The mystery of Christ is deeply ingrained within every human being. Regardless of one's beliefs, the idea of Christ is something that has touched the depths of the human psyche since the beginning. But few are those who truly understand what this word points to, and even fewer are those who get to experience it. Jesus is a man, a master, who became a living Christ. He became Christified. But the word Christ in its purest meaning does not mean an individual man. The word Christ derives from the Greek word Christos, the anointed one. When people say Jesus Christ, the word Christ is the title given to Master Jesus to indicate that he has incarnated the cosmic force of Christ within himself. In this way, Jesus represents the innermost being, the divine spark within each of us. That force is connected to the highest and most purest dimension of reality, the Absolute. And it is this Christic substance which connects us to that inner space. Because the ego cannot experience the Absolute. Only the Christ can. The cosmic Christ is the solar aspect of the Logos, the divine spark within each human being. The Christ is the mediator, the bridge between the Absolute and the manifested universe. Christ is beyond any personality or individuality. Christ only appears in this physical, lower, dense material world when it expresses itself through any human being who is prepared to receive it. But the process to become Christified is not easy. It is the most difficult task that any human being can undertake. This is why Jesus played out an elaborate drama throughout his Christic process, or crucifixion. The symbolism behind the crucifixion runs very deep. It symbolizes the final death one must take in order to die, finally, to all ego. There are many spiritual teachings and schools that talk of how beautiful enlightenment is, but no other symbol conveys the reality of it better than the crucifixion or the cross. There are several masters who are also Christified, but their process happened internally. Master Jesus lived through this process externally, as a symbolic teaching for those who understand the hidden meanings behind what he went through. In the Gnostic teachings, we have an elaborate map of this process called the Three Mountains, which outlines all of the processes of initiation that an adept must go through in order to reach the next part on the path. And it is at the top of the second mountain specifically where one experiences full Christification. The first mountain is simply a preparation for the second mountain, to test if the initiate is ready to descend into their inner darkness in order to illuminate their psychological hells. Usually, people would assume that a spiritual master is free from ego. But the reality is, a master is someone who knows every corner of the egoic psyche. They know the science of sin. second mountain is very difficult because it is a process where ego is always seen. It is always observed. It is an exploration of the inner hells in a conscious way, a conscious descension. This is why Jesus said at the heights of his inner work, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" Those words reflect the deep anguish and suffering that Jesus endured while experiencing so much inner darkness. The crucifixion represents this process of inner transformation and the sacrifice of the ego. When Jesus cried this out, he was expressing the pain of separation from his own inner divinity, the disconnection from his own being due to the burden of the Christic process and experiencing the collective karma and weight of the sins of humanity. This sort of divine weeping serves as a reminder for us to reflect upon our own spiritual state. It is a call to awaken our consciousness, to recognize our own inner disconnection from our divine essence, and to strive towards the path of self-realization. On the first mountain, the initiate learns little things about themselves from time to time. Some negative desires, their laziness, their anger, etc. But on the second mountain, we are shown hundreds more, constantly. This is for the initiate to exercise death of all egoic patterns within himself, to sacrifice everything within in order to experience true self-transformation. This requires tremendous spiritual willpower. It requires the force of Christ. In other words, it requires supreme compassion and understanding. One cannot die for oneself, but true death only comes when it is done for others. This is a Christic mystery, and this is why the Christic process is so difficult, because one's compassion becomes tested through the adversities of life, through betrayals, through slander, through temptations, etc., in order to see if the initiate truly loves humanity, to see if the initiate loves and understands even their own enemies. And amidst the worst of these adversities and betrayals, if you're still able to forgive and sacrifice, then one progresses spiritually very fast. In this way, the force of Christ is the most revolutionary force on this planet. It can overcome any obstacle, any internal or external challenge. In this way, forgiveness is a form of high magic. That is why it is said that Christ will save the world and the sins of the planet. But people mistakenly and sincerely confuse this with the personality of the man Jesus. Indeed, Jesus is a powerful master who helps us. But it is inaccurate to think that we can still reach liberation through living unconsciously as long as we pray for forgiveness. This is what many people do today. But no, true forgiveness, true redemption is found by seeking out the Christ within yourself and putting it into practice, into lived thoughts and actions. That is true sacrifice, the highest form of love that there is. It is much better to connect to the Christ in this way, instead of just through prayer. The practice of Christ is a practice of sacrifice, which endows the highest form of human understanding. to learn to die within oneself, to conquer oneself completely, and overcome one's illusory inner world in order to find out that which is real, that which is eternal, not based on desires, memories, or dreams. You see, what exists within each of us is the entire human race, along with the entire human psyche. And that includes the depths of the unconscious mind. In order to die to all of that unconsciousness, one needs supreme transcendental love within themselves, like killing the ego with the crushing force of kindness, compassion, and understanding. Therefore, anyone who has truly died to all their ego does, in turn, love all of humanity, because humanity represents the human psyche. In this way, when one becomes a light to themselves, they become a light to others, naturally. When you illuminate the unconscious parts of your psyche, you become a light to others externally too. But the Christ is not just a light that illuminates. It's a fire which annihilates the darkness completely. It reveals the truth of reality whether we like it or not. That is why Jesus, representing the Christ, said, "I have come to send fire on the earth. If someone is near me, he will burn. I am the fire that blazes. Whoever is near me is near fire. Whoever is far from me is far from life." And INRI, with its inner Latin meaning of ignis natura renovata integra, which means through fire, one's inner nature can be restored. This all holds profound significance for our own spiritual journey. Many people are often challenged by how to overcome ego, taking years through several methods. And while techniques can work, in the end, the only superior power to overcome ego is the power or force of which is known as Christic love, or love that comes from fire. Love that comes from internal understanding, compassion, and sacrifice, which inevitably is all intimately related to the fire of the Divine Mother Kundalini. Can you say that you can let others freely be and choose whatever they want while you take up the path of awakening? Can you say that you love others without controlling them? Can you say you know how to love someone even when they are insulting you? Can you say that you put yourself in other people's shoes and try to understand them when they are angry or acting unconsciously? Can you practice kindness even when one acts as a tyrant towards you? Can you still love someone even when they have betrayed you or have committed the worst crimes against you? If the answer to these questions is no, then the ego is still deeply rooted within you. You choose to listen to the reactionary voices of demons, instead of sacrificing those voices in order to listen to the voice of truth, to the force of Christ that easily overcomes all of those kinds of temptations. The Christ is a reminder to remember to recognize the ego in ourselves and die to it. And even if we see the ego in others, to forgive it. Since to do that, it is to recognize that at the root of all ego is pain and suffering. And everyone is suffering in some way or another. It does not hurt to be kind, warm-hearted, and compassionate. But it does hurt our own ego, because it is the Christic fire that we are exercising in those moments. And it is important to understand that we don't just forgive in order to be good or saintly, but that it is an act of intelligent recognition, of letting go, of perpetuating egoic patterns in this world. If you cannot forgive others externally, then you perpetuate some kind of spiritual limitation within yourself. You can pray and meditate for many hours every day, but it won't make so much of a difference compared to how much you can embrace the Christic force from moment to moment in daily life, amidst life's adversities and relationships. As we've just been reflecting on, it takes great spiritual energy in order to truly live with the energy of Christ. To live in a state from moment to moment that connects us with the consciousness of the cosmic Christ. There's a particular mantra that can strengthen us for this, and at the same time help us to invoke more of this Christic energy in order to handle the pain of everyday existence and to accelerate the awakening of our own individual consciousness. To do this practice, you should sit down in a comfortable position, take some deep breaths, and free of external distractions, turn your senses inwards, close your eyes, and with a serene mind, body totally relaxed. When you are ready, when you feel a certain degree of stillness, that inner space within, start chanting, vocally or mentally, the mantra. And just keep repeating that mantra. This is the vowel of the solar plexus chakra. And as you do this, with your awareness perfectly concentrated on the mantra, begin to see with your mind's eye the sun in your solar plexus, nourishing your soul. And in front of you, a cross of light showering your solar plexus, feeding it with the nourishment of the cosmic substance of Christ. You may also see a rose opening within the center of this cross of light. Do this profound practice for 1 hour a day, sincerely striving towards the Christic light, and you will begin to experience a profound shift in consciousness. The reason why this is done in the solar plexus is because the sun governs this chakra. The sun represents the cosmic Christ, which nourishes and sustains the soul. It is a powerful symbol of resurrection and transformation, as it rises each day, bringing light to the darkness. In the same way, the Christic energy awakens within us, bringing light to the darkness of our ignorance and leading us to spiritual awakening and enlightenment. By harnessing the solar force within ourselves through this practice, we can awaken the Christic energy and experience this divine presence within us. You can also reflect on the journey that Kundalini must take through the chakras as it attempts to ascend to the heart. Before Kundalini can enter the heart, it has to pass through the solar plexus, However, the solar plexus is intimately related with our ego and willpower. The solar plexus is the chief of the 3 lower inferior chakras and is therefore the throne of the ego. It is the seat of the I. This is why, in order to authentically awaken this chakra in a positive way, one needs Christic energy. One needs to know how to deny their own unconscious will. So through this practice, we can transform our willpower from unconsciously preserving the ego and instead dissolve it. Through this kind of internal sacrifice, we slowly acquire higher will or conscious willpower to let thy will of our inner being to be done and not the will of the ego. To let the Christ prevail, we must consciously and decisively reject the ego's negative qualities, such as pride, envy, lust, anger, greed, etc. This requires constant vigilance and a sincere desire for inner change. And as one continues, they develop an intimate relationship with the Christ. Whenever one is awakened in the inner worlds, in the astral worlds, one recognizes the Christic consciousness, enabling them to be aware spontaneously, with wonder, from moment to moment, just as a child sees the world. This is only possible because of the Christ. And as one continues day to day in their practices, as the ego diminishes, the Christ within us can manifest its virtues more and more, such as love, compassion, wisdom, humility, etc. Through the death of the ego, the Christ can fully awaken and guide our thoughts, feelings, and actions, leading us gradually towards spiritual liberation and union with the divine. And as your devotion continues day to day, this conscious willpower in the solar plexus keeps the divine flame, the light of Christ, alive in the heart.